Coming up on the Empowered Woman podcast.
I got into this business because I was fascinated by how the mind works. I was fascinated by how we can help people untangle themselves from things that they learned early on. And you see, I want to emphasize that we learned it because then we can unlearn it.
Welcome to the Empowered Woman podcast, the #1 show on visibility strategies for women entrepreneurs. If you want to get empowered to be seen, stand out on social media, stages, TV, and more to make an impact with your voice and business, you're in the right place. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Marcia Spurk, and I'm your host, professional singer and visibility strategist. Welcome again, and let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, Kristine. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Marta, I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'm excited for our conversation. It's a very, very interesting topic and theme that you bring to the table. Why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Well, my name is Kristine Jensen, and I've been a psychotherapist for 40 plus years. And I wrote a book last year that sort of brings together a lot of the things that I learned by being in practice and also doing my own work. And so I see some clients still. I live in Central California, Central Coast of California, and that's a little bit about me.
I love that. Well, I like a backstory. You've been doing this for lots of years, and you have a book compiling some of the nuggets and the stories, but I'd love to hear, the beginnings of choosing this career path, and I'm assuming working with different types of people until you realized who you wanted to focus on, if that's a thing. Tell me more. I'm curious.
Okay. Well, when I first started practicing, I was very young. And I knew one thing for sure, and that was, well, this was actually when I decided to go into the field. I knew one thing, and that was that I was really screwed up. And I just felt like that I was such a mess inside that I wanted some help with it, but I really felt like that I needed not only someone outside of me to help, but I also needed to be able to help myself. Mm-hmm. And also I didn't want to really expose how screwed up I felt. So in some ways, being a psychotherapist is perfect for that because you don't disclose a lot about yourself. I mean, you disclose what you think is helpful to the client, but the rest of it you keep to yourself. It's also a beautiful profession in that people come and talk with you. They came and talked with me about the things that were deeply troubling them. And this was not like the kind of conversation you have in a cocktail party, as you can imagine. This was a much deeper, much more vulnerable conversation. And in the course of listening to other people, I realized that you can be really competent on the outside, but on the inside, oftentimes, there is this disquiet, this feeling like I'm kind of not what I'm projecting myself to be. I have more doubt inside of me than I think other people do. I feel like a fraud too much of the time. And even though we can name those kinds of internal phenomena, we oftentimes don't understand what they are, and we don't understand where they come from. And that was true for me. I had finished many years of working, and I still felt like there was this disquiet inside of me that would show up, and it would show up mostly when I was up to something that was important to me. It could also just show up in everyday things. Like I remember one time having a dinner party. Well, this was actually not just one time. I could think of many times. Mm-hmm. Having a dinner party, everything going fine, people laughing and joking, everybody seeming to, just in thanking me as they go out the door, and me feeling sort of like, oh, that was nice. And then I'd go over and start doing the dishes or getting the dishes ready to go into the dishwasher. And I would start going back over everything. And I would think, oh, did I say the right thing? Maybe I made too light of when John was talking about his concern. Maybe I was just too much. Maybe people didn't have as good a time. And there it would come again. And it would just like ruin what had happened during the dinner party.
Yeah.
And it was exhausting. It was exhausting. And yet there it was. It came way too often. What was I going to do about it? So I began to really focus in on myself because I felt like that was a really good place to start. And I created what I called these little therapy sessions where I would sit down with myself and I would have this little conversation. And I would have the professional part of me kind of interview. We all have a professional part, right?
Yes.
Yes, we
I
know
love
that.
this. Hmm.
And if you're like me and like a lot of other people, your personal self is oftentimes not as together as your professional self. And so I would have my professional self interview my personal self and just talk with her. And I discovered some very interesting things. And I discovered a lot of what the origins of these internal conversations that I had, these imposter syndrome, we'll call it that, kinds of conversations. I just discovered where they came from. And I also began to then put together sort of this little therapeutic process for me to go through in order to be able to dissolve some of this and to ease some of this and soften some of this. And as I was doing this with myself, I wanted to talk to my clients about it. And yet I realized that it'd really be great if they just had a book that they could read. So I started looking for books that they could read. And at the time, I did not come up with anything. And little by little, I thought, well, maybe I could write a book.
Yeah.
And so I started writing these things down, and it eventually ended up being a book. But the thing that I really want to emphasize is I want to emphasize how common this phenomena is. And we can call it a lot of things. And one of the things that I think is really important to understand, Marta, is that these voices that we have inside of us actually started out as a form of protection. And if we look back and see about how we were raised, and this is not just some, highly traumatic family situation, but just kind of the normal situation, we are taught that, and it's reinforced that we kind of read what our parents need. We read what pleases them. We read how to be, how to not be, and we take that in, and it's really very deeply wired because it has to do with wanting to feel acceptable and wanting to feel loved and wanting to have a connection with our parents. So if our mother, for example, I'll just use this, if our mother, for example, is a bit insecure about herself and she wants to kind of be the queen bee of all conversations and she wants to be the queen bee of her home, she does not want some wide-eyed, bushy-tailed, smart, vocal young daughter upstaging her. Right?
Yes.
And so there's the message of be smaller, be quieter, be more invisible, let me shine, prop me up, take care of me, help me feel good. And we take those things in very deeply, as I was saying, because they are connected to being loved and being accepted. So then we move into our adult life, right? And let's just make an example. We want to do something like give a speech in front of our colleagues or in front of our work group or in front of a big group. And what do we begin to feel? We begin to feel this message of, I don't know, you better not go too big. People won't like you. They'll think you're full of yourself. They'll think you're an imposter, that you really don't know what you're talking about. You better keep it small. You better why don't you scale this back to why don't you just go talk to a couple of friends? And then maybe off into the future, maybe you'll be able to talk, but probably not. And so that voice you see, there it is in our adult version, started out as a way to protect connection. Yeah. And so that's why it feels so powerful. Mm-hmm. And then the next question is, okay, well then, so what do we do about that? Because I always want to know, okay, so what do we do about it? Mm-hmm. And one of the things we do about it is we just recognize it. Oh, there that is again. We recognize in the beginning that had an adaptive purpose. Mm-hmm. It's a leftover from my past. It no longer has to define me. And so you see, instead of getting upset, oh, there's that voice again, damn it, I thought I'd outgrown that. I've been a psychotherapist for 40 plus years. How come I'm still hearing that? What the hell is wrong with me? I must be the only one who feels that way. Other people don't go around talking about that. So instead of fighting it, and instead of hating it, and instead of trying to ditch it, we understand it. We develop a certain compassion towards it. We can even envision, if we want to, this younger part of ourselves that wanted so deeply to be able to calm this hypothetical mother enough so that she could feel good about herself, so that she could feel confident enough to let other people occupy the space as well. But you see, as a kid, we were never able to do that because that wasn't our problem. And therefore, it wasn't anything that we could fix. And it was an issue that our dear parents brought with them into their adult lives, but it left us feeling like, what's wrong with me? I can't fix my mother. What's wrong with me? I can't love my father enough for him to, not have to drink or not have to be at work all the time and want to come home to his family. So we started feeling like, I'm just not enough. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. And so by understanding that, then we can bring some compassion in for ourselves, and we can begin to have a self-talk that helps us over this, what would appear to be this relentless tethering to the past that we can't seem to move beyond. So I got into this business because I was fascinated by how the mind works. I was fascinated by how we can help people untangle themselves from things that they learned early on. And you see, I want to emphasize that we learned it because then we can unlearn it. And that's why I named my book Bruised, Not Broken, is because that's kind of the imagery that we could have, that we were bruised, but we certainly were not broken. We can unlearn these things. And eventually, these voices will recede. These voices that are trying to protect us, they'll realize that, or we will internally realize that we don't need them anymore and that we can move forward. That doesn't mean they won't ever return. It doesn't mean we won't ever hear them again. And then, we might say, okay, so if we are able to create more spaciousness within inside of ourselves, then where does that take us? Well, that takes us then into being able to listen more to our internal guidance or our internal self or our internal person. And it allows us then to not just be attuned to what is needed by other people for us to be. We get to sort of be our own person more. And so in that way, it's a very gratifying journey to take, both for myself and then also to help other people. And hopefully, maybe something that can be useful to your audience as well, Marta.
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for everything that you just shared. I want to go back to one of the first things that you mentioned, which was you got into this because you realized you were really screwed up and you used your own learning and your own tools on yourself and developed a lot of the tools because you were doing this work on yourself and you had those meetings between the personal and the professional. I love that so much because time and time again, we hear from, other entrepreneurs, service providers that say, I need to use my own advice. I need to,
Yes.
We're so good at giving people tools and telling them in our expertise, right, what they should be doing, but sometimes we're not really doing what we're telling them to do, even though we know it works. So having those conversations with yourself and being really honest, because there is a part of us that knows, for the most part, what we could be doing better. And then there's the other part that is stuck in those past stories and those past patterns. But obviously having a professional such as yourself to guide somebody through that is very helpful. Yes. And I love the example that you shared between mother and daughter. My show is focused on women entrepreneurs. I usually have men here that are empowering women, helping us and sharing their expertise. But I think many women out there resonate with the example that you shared,
Thank you.
wanting to please,
Yes.
especially their moms, right? There's a special
Yes.
relationship and bond there, and it doesn't go away. We just take it into adult life, and then we keep wondering, I'm so successful. I've
Yes.
accomplished so many things. Why is this
Yes.
little nagging voice still there? So I love that you
Yes.
covered all of that and said that there's hope and that they're not the only ones. Because why do we have
Yes.
this we're so stubborn in thinking I'm the only one going through this. Hey, let me ask you a question. Would you like to be my next guest on the Empowered Woman podcast? Do you have a story you'd like to share? Want more visibility for your business on a show ranked in the top 0.5% in the world? Well, then head on over to martasburke.com/podcast guest for more information.
I think because other people, well, nowadays people are talking about it a lot more openly, like
Yeah.
you're talking about it a lot more opening and normalizing it. And I also want to just underscore a concept that really made a big difference for me, and that is the difference between our professional self and our personal self. Because you see, when the professional self says, "Oh, I could be doing all these things. I could be creating this. I could be teaching this. I could be mentoring." And then the other part of us is like, "Oh, I don't know." Well, that's our personal self. And unless we spend some time really dialing in to that personal self, the two selves may not talk that much. I mean, that was true for me. I was really busy building my practice, seeing clients, doing workshops, raising kids, having a marriage, you know, trying to, do all the, dealing with in-laws, all these kinds of things. And it's like taking time then to go into this personal self, which oftentimes we don't want to because it's vulnerable, it cries, it feels it feels kind of weak, and we'd rather just go hang out with old high power Marta, let's just
Yep.
go hang out there with that adult self. And
Mm-hmm.
so taking the time to really compassionately go inside, like you would with your own children. We listen to our own children and their concerns in a very deep and supportive way. And that's, of course, what we need as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So an encouragement for the people listening. Are you spending time? Is your personal or your professional self taking the time to spend some time with your personal self and going in within, which, like you said, could be
Yes.
uncomfortable, could be vulnerable, and that's why we avoid it. But that's the very key to
Yes.
changing things or mending things that may have happened in the past. And one of the
Yes.
ways that they can do that is reading your book. So tell us more. You already talked about that. Give us the entire title. What is, where it's available, and what can people expect when they read it?
Okay, so this full title is Bruised to Not Broken, Healing the Shame of a Troubled Childhood. And you can find it, of course, on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Your local bookstore may not have it, but they can order it. It's available to them. I also give away some free chapters on my website. I welcome people coming and commenting on my website because that helps me know what's helpful and what's not helpful. And the book is really a way of identifying where some of these things come from that we were talking about, how to understand them, how to work with them. And then it talks about how to move beyond it so that we can soften the way in which we are tethered to the past. I like that word. We can soften that. We can free ourselves from that. This book goes into all of that in very practical, easy to understand kinds of ways.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that. We'll make sure
Thank you.
I have the links both to your website and also to the book so people can go check it out and take this conversation and reflection a little bit further. You shared about yourself, but also the hypothetical. Is there a client story, or obviously these things are confidential, or anything that comes to mind that you could share with us in terms of like a transformation? This is how they came to you, and by doing this process, there was a resolution or something that happened that you can remember and share with us?
Well, I think I should keep this light, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
So,
I'm good with that.
so I years ago, I had a client who came to me, and she was extremely ashamed about some behavior that she had had in her early life. And the backstory was that she had been sent off to a boarding school, and she by an aunt, because the aunt realized that the girl was just not getting the kind of support and protection that she needed in her family. So she went off to boarding school, and there she would see the girls, her classmates, getting these packages from home. And in them would be cookies and little love notes from their mom and maybe a new sweater or something. And she didn't get anything. And so this was so devastating for her that she would go to stores and she would shoplift, and she would get some little things for herself, and then she would package them up and she would send them to herself. And then she would have the joy of opening them in front of her friends. They would see that she was loved and cared about, and she would get to experience that feeling also. And so she was very ashamed of that. But at the time, I could see, well, this was her way of doing what she could to try and create this feeling of being loved and cared about. And wasn't it ingenious? I mean, if we skipped over,
Right, the shoplifting.
Shoplifting, if we just skipped over that and like maybe said a little prayer like, thank you, God, you didn't get caught,
Right.
we could see that, this was an extremely ingenious way for her to be able to support this natural drive she had to be loved and connected. And so by making that, by reframing that for her and letting her see the strength behind it, it allowed her then to parlay that kind of conversation within herself to become much more successful in this business that she was launching. And she began to see, I don't need to spend time going back and being ashamed about what I did. I don't need to spend time going back and da 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 da. Not there's not some value in going back. We don't want to diss that completely.
Right.
But she translated it into I'm ingenious, I'm clever, I'm creative, I'm resourceful, and I can do it. And so that was, and so her business began to come together differently. She was developing a business that had to do with children's education. And she was able to then turn that around. So I thought that was, I was really amazed at how that unfolded.
Oh, that's such a good story. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Yeah.
Wow, I love that. And I love the reframe too, that she was able to get to and how it affected her life. How these
Yes.
things that could be silly, right, at the time are still haunting us, like the other example that you shared. And then
Yes.
how you can change that connection and change
Yes.
the way you see it to move forward.
Yes.
I love
By
that.
seeing that it was originally protective, adaptive,
Mhm.
and then having a little conversation with yourself around that. Yes.
That is beautiful. I love that so much. Well, before I have you share with us again how people can connect with you, I like asking all of my guests what I call my $1,000,000 question. Are you ready?
Okay, $1,000,000. Okay.
Kristine, what is an empowered woman to you?
Well, an empowered woman to me is someone who doesn't have to get it all right. She doesn't have to be confident about everything. She measures her success not by the amount of applause she gets from outside of herself or how she meets certain goals that she thought up or someone else thought up for her. But she measures her success by how comfortable she can feel within her own skin. And that empowered woman is someone who knows that, yes, she needs to attend to what's going on around her and to the people around her, but she doesn't need to try and fix them. She doesn't need to try and get them to like her. She doesn't need to be responsible for all kinds of things. She needs to spend the time, like we spoke about, or she can spend the time coming in, getting comfortable with herself, learning to have a big, huge dose of compassion for herself and the ways in which she has learned to show up in life and to be really proud of what that is. So to me, that's an empowered woman. It's the strength from inside that really, I think, supports whatever we do on the outside.
Absolutely. So good. I love that so much. And I love the work that you
Thank
do.
you.
and empowering women, right? With
Yes.
how to have those conversations with themselves and change their outlook on life and on themselves.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Well, tell us,
Yes.
how can people connect with you? Do you hang out on LinkedIn, social media, or is the website the best place?
Well, I hang out on LinkedIn and Facebook and my website. And so those are the best ways to get a hold of me.
Wonderful. I'll make sure and have all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing with us today. This was great.
Thank you, Marta. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks so much for tuning in today. I hope this episode empowered you. And if you enjoyed the show, please join the Empowered Woman community on Facebook and share with friends or leave a review on iTunes so more people can discover this empowering message. Until next time, bye.